So if you are not here for this lecture, here it is. That way you are able to get those active listening notes. Just as a reminder, the active listening notes are the extra notes from things I say that you should be putting in the side. Again, not every section has to be filled, but it should not all be blank. So economic systems. Again, we are doing economics second semester, but it is still very mixed with our governmental systems. So the definition is a way of organizing the production and consumption of goods and services. All right. So economic systems exist because people must meet certain needs to survive, such as food, clothing, shelter. There has to be a way to provide that to people, have a way to exchange things that make people more comfortable and more entertaining. As you can see, there's the entertainment industry. That's a big part of our economy, especially the United States. One of our biggest exports is pop culture, right? So that's something that goes into the production of that entertainment and people consuming it all over the world. So an economic system, they need to answer three main questions. What needs to be produced? What is there a need for? What do people still want? Are we still making things like beepers or fax machines? Not really, because there's not really a big demand for it. How should it be produced? Who's the ones making it? Where is it being made? Who controls the factories? And how should it be distributed? How are people going to afford it? How are people going to pay for it? Things like that. So just as a review from our last lecture, the United States uses a market economy where there's private ownership of most things, not everything. But the advantage is that it is more efficient. There's a higher chance of growth, higher quality of goods and services, and higher standards of living. A lot of this, as we talked about, coming from that idea of competition. If people are competing to make a better product, it'll make better ones. Whereas if there's only one company making a product, they don't have any incentive to make it better or make it the best. Disadvantages, though, is that does, because of the private ownership, lead to greater unemployment and recessions. And it's also going to lead to greater income inequality, as we see here, where CEOs are making 100,000 times more than the frontline employees. Second major economic system, command economy, public ownership, communism. Advantages is that it is government, so they can force you to be doing these things. So full employment and lower chance of economic recessions, right? There's also going to be more equality in the income because the government is setting all that. Disadvantages, though, is it's less efficient and there's not as much economic growth. There's also a lower quality of goods and services and lower standards of living. So we're going to talk about a couple more economies now. So a traditional economy, we don't see this too much anymore. Definition, people rely on traditional customs to answer the three fundamental economic questions. Again, those are what should be produced, how, and how should it be distributed. So going back to that, basically it is how did their ancestors do it? Probably going back to sixth grade history, right? So people providing for themselves, or you could say people that live off the grid, essentially. Hunters and gatherers, but a majority of this is going to be farmers because they are more bartering or trading their goods to other people. There's no regulation by the government. However, it does lead to a lower standard of living, more simple living, right? So the best example in modern day is really going to be the Inuit people of Alaska and northern Canada. For the most part, the government's kind of leaving them alone and letting them do their own thing. And then we also have a mixed economy. So this is probably going to be something you're more familiar with. Definition: an economic system that combines market and elements of a command economy. Characteristics: most modern countries do have this. Okay, so if we go back to this market economy, not everything in the United States is private ownership, right? There are some government bodies that do take that do a lot of things in our economy. So we're not pure market economy, neither is China pure command economy, right? So most are going to be mixed, where there is some government involvement. For an example, again, market economy in the US is bigger than the command economy, but there is still more, or there's still both. And then the opposite for China. Right. And then we are looking at kind of three more systems of government. So there is a unitary system, power concentrated in the national government. Regional governments can only use power given to them by a central government. All right, so this does promote unity. Everyone is going for their nationality, their country, and there's less fractions, sort of. But disadvantaged regions of a country are different and may need specific help. So this is not what the US has, but imagine if we did have this, people who lived in lesser populated areas wouldn't really get their problems solved. Like the federal government's not going to spend a ton of money on people living in Wyoming because they're not going to affect the votes of the total government. So they would kind of ignore them. Federal system. This is one definition: power is divided between national and regional or local governments. So this is something that you should be familiar with, right? This is basically the United States. We have our Constitution, which both the regional and central governments have to abide by. But then the people vote on both regional and central governments. So they're deciding both of those, and they both have power, right? Central government has biggest power, but in our Constitution, everything not spelled out to be federal is sent down to regional or state governments. So the advantage: flexibility in meeting the needs of a large and diverse population. That way, the federal government can step in and do some things, but then your state or your city government is doing other things for your life. But it can lead to conflicts between regions and the national government. We see that a lot here, divided nation, right? And then a less common one is going to be the confederal system. Definition: power resides in the different regional, local governments. National government only given power when the regional governments grant it. It's something we don't see. Think back to US history last year, Articles of Confederation, where the individual states all had to vote yes for something to allow the government to do it. Advantage is you're not really going to have dictatorships, right? Because it's in the US's example, 13 different groups would have all had to vote for the one dictator. But disadvantage: national government's too weak, which threatens survival of the country. It'd be really hard to declare war, to get centralized money, things like that. Which was a big reason why the United States initially failed under the Articles of Confederation. All right, so that was the lecture for the day. Again, remember to do your reflection, and I'll see you in class when I see you.